Coming up next, the story behind a song about the trauma that this artist endured during his childhood. He felt alienated by the world, but found no shelter at home because of his abusive parents. Every ounce of emotion he felt went into this song. But when he went to record it, he discovered his voice didn't effectively deliver what he was trying to express. It made him question whether he should even record this song. So he turned to a friend, a fellow musician who also had a painful childhood, to be the song's interpreter, and the result was something magical. The recording became an international smash that had such an impact, it was reimagined for a motion picture soundtrack that attracted a new generation of fans 20 years later. The story of this unforgettable 80s smash is coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember the great cola war of the 80s between Coke and Pepsi, you're gonna dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now, click the big red button and click the bell so you always know when our latest and greatest come out. We have some great interviews and some great videos coming out. Also check us out on Patreon. We've got a link in the description. You know, our childhood memories, they're like the bricks that build the house of who we are today. They're the little snippets of life that stick with us, shaping the way we see the world, the way we react to things, the way we live our lives. It's like each memory is a thread in this big old quilt of our existence, all stitched together to make up the unique pattern that forms us as individuals. The childhood memories of Tears for Fears co-founder Roland Orzabal. They were sad and deeply painful, and impossible to escape. At an early age, Roland felt alienated from the world, and he found his only sanctuary was sitting all alone in his bedroom just strumming a guitar. When he was 19 years old, he poured all of these emotions, from his unhappy childhood into one of his first and ultimately most influential compositions. One of my favorite songs ever, Mad World. Roland Orzabal grew up in Havant and Bath, England. His father suffered from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, from the harrowing experience of serving in World War II. This was long before doctors really understood what the condition was, and it was before they came up with a medical term for it. Back in the 60s and even the 70s, medical experts treated patients with PTSD as emotional and physical defectives, who were dangerous to society, in their words. For his condition, Roland's father, like many PTSD patients, were given electric shock treatment. He was very abusive to Roland's mother and to his son, and the domestic abuse led to a deeply scarred and divided family. Whenever there was a domestic altercation or negative atmosphere in the Orzabal home, Roland would retreat to the bathroom, turn out the lights, and just strum his guitar. As a 9-year-old boy, he could totally relate to Simon & Garfunkel's 1965 classic, The Sound of Silence, especially Paul Simon's evocative lyric, "Hello darkness, my old friend."
Hello darkness, my old friend.
Roland chose the bathroom to provide his escape because the echo that the room provided. In the darkness, he would just sit on the bathroom floor and strum his guitar. For Roland, it was a form of self-soothing, just being alone, playing the guitar with his music. When Roland turned 18, he said that he dropped out of everything. He added that during that time in his life, there were days when he couldn't even be bothered to get out of bed. The two things that gave Roland enough motivation to keep moving was his aspirations of becoming a professional musician and his relationship with Caroline, a young woman that he dated as a teenager that would later become his wife. Roland and Caroline, they moved in together in a flat above a pizza parlor that overlooked a busy section of Barton Street near the Theatre Royal in Bath. He was 19, he was out of work, he received unemployment checks from the government, while Caroline worked 3 jobs to keep him afloat so that Roland could, focus on his music. And then one morning, while Caroline was at work, Roland sat by the window just watching the people scatter on the street below, frantically, moving about, these people. But they were actually going nowhere. And that's when an idea for a song just came over him. A song that would describe his life up to this point and the way he perceived the world below him as he was watching. As an adolescent in a fractured home, Roland never had any real responsibility except to go to school. The idea of people scrambling about in the working class seemed pointless to him. All around me are familiar faces. Worn out places, worn out faces. Bright and early for their daily races, going nowhere, going nowhere. Now, from that point, Roland unleashed all the anguish of his youth into this song, describing the nervousness he felt in school and the isolation that he encountered all the time. Went to school and was very nervous. No one knew me, no one knew me. Hello, teacher, tell me what's my lesson. Look right through me, look right through me. I mean, it's just poetry. Look right through me, look right through me. The original concept for Mad World was to be a new wave song that was actually going to sound similar to Girls on Film by Duran Duran. The song came on his tinny portable radio that barely worked, but it was the song's rhythm that grabbed Roland. I mean, yes, Roland borrowed inspiration from Girls on Film to come up with the melody for Mad World, but he explained that it shouldn't be called plagiarism. Instead, Roland referred to it as channeling, the confident feeling you get from a rhythm of a song that you absolutely love. Channeling occurs when a songwriter immerses themselves in that rhythm and follows whatever comes out of the ether that stimulates the brain. Those are his words. The channeling of Girls on Film, that led to the writing of Mad World on an acoustic guitar. Another song that was instrumental in the creation of Mad World was an obscure synth pop song that captivated Roland called The World. This is by the British band Dalek, I Love You. When Roland attempted to sing the lyrics to his song, strumming his acoustic guitar, his honest assessment was that it sounded pretty bad. He didn't have the voice for this song. His uneasiness about the way that it sounded, when he was trying to sing Mad World, it made him question whether he should even go on further with the song's development. He just wasn't feeling it. Now, fortunately, Roland was close friends with a guy named Curt Smith, a bassist, who had gifted versatility with his singing style. And Curt's singing would in due course bring Mad World to life. There's so much emotion in Curt's voice, just beautiful. So get this, Curt Smith and Roland Orzabal were part of a little band called Graduate. They were kind of a mod power pop vibe piece. Roland was the main lyricist behind the original songs they performed. When Graduate was jamming, all the tunes they belted out were cooked up on Roland Orzabal's guitar. And get this, before Graduate, Roland used to hang with his Graduate bandmate John Baker playing Simon & Garfunkel tunes at a hair salon on Saturdays. That would have been cool to see. I mean, put that image in your head of a duo singing Mrs. Robinson while you're getting your ears lowered at Supercuts or something like that. Graduated, so to speak, to the synthesized domination of the new wave era of the early 80s. Not only did Roland write most of the material for this band, he also performed lead vocals. Now, the band didn't last long, but when Graduate broke up, Roland and Curt continued to work and collaborate, teaming up with the future Naked Eyes duo Rob Fisher and Pete Byrne for the flash-in-the-pan group Neon. Then they formed Tears for Fears a year later in 1982. Roland and Curt, they had a lot in common. They both grew up in Bath, England. They both had a strained relationship with their fathers, both had issues from their childhood, and they shared a deep passion for much of the same artists. The music of David Bowie and Peter Gabriel and Talking Heads and Gary Newman. In fact, Gary Newman, who was smoking hot on the British charts in the early 80s, he had a profound impact on how they wanted their debut album, The Hurting, to sound. Something else that Curt and Roland had in common was a shared conviction to the theories of psychologist Arthur Yanov. Actually, the band's name Tears for Fears came directly from Yanov's 1980 publication Prisoners of Pain. The paraphrase excerpt from Yanov's book is Tears as a Replacement for Fears. So as we further break down this song, I do want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, the glasses I always wear on the show. Right now, you can get ready-made reading glasses starting at just $9.95 or progressive lenses starting at just $37.95. Regular prescription glasses start at only $6.95. Click on our info button to get yours today. The Hurting was crafted to be a concept album. It was deeply personal, delving into the unsettling past for Roland and Curt, but meant to be emotionally liberating. In Mad World, the young narrator, alienated from the world around him, recalls his agonizing school days and concludes that the dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. One of the best lyrics of the 80s, definitely, one of my favorites from the song, because it's both shocking and thought-provoking, thought-probing. That provocative line shouldn't be taken at face value, though. It doesn't mean the narrator has a death wish. According to Roland, morbid dreams like one in which your life is in peril release tension. The dreamer wakes up actually feeling better. That's another theory of Arthur Yanov's that TFF put into their songs. So TFF was signed by Mercury Records. The duo of Roland Orzabal and Curt Smith recruited drummer Manny Elias and keyboard and computer programmer Ian Stanley to go into the studio with producer Chris Hughes and engineer Ross Cullum. Roland came into the studio with dozens of songs that he'd written over the last 2 years, including the unrealized Mad World. Roland took a couple more turns at performing the lead vocal, but if anything, he was even more disappointed with the way that he sounded in the studio. So he suggested that Curt Smith give it a try, give it a whirl. Suddenly, it sounded magical. It sounded amazing. Mad World was very natural for Curt to sing. He could truly relate to Roland's dark lyrics. Like Roland, Curt was the middle of 3 sons. He'd been brought up by a mother who was on her own because of an absent father. Now, this part's really sad. Curt's father died when he was only 17, but he didn't mourn his death. By that point, Curt despised his father. Memories of his dad only angered him. So the melancholy of Mad World, it was a perfect platform for Curt Smith to release his inner frustration and his rage. The musical arrangement for Mad World was more channeling from albums Roland and Curt thought were brilliantly produced, like Scary Monsters from Bowie and Remain in Light by Talking Heads. TFF had access to all the state-of-the-art synthesizers at that time. Gave them a chance to experiment, to create a variety of haunting effects. There's the distinctive percussion intro on the recording of Mad World, for example. That intro was simulated by a Roland CR78 drum machine, not real drums. The intro was initially recorded at a much faster speed, but when Chris Hughes and Ross Cullum had the idea to slow down the tempo, the result was nothing short of fantastic. Mad World was intended to be placed as the B-side to Pale Shelter, but the label thought the track was too good to be a flip side, so the song was released as the band's 3rd single. Mad World was essentially the lead single from The Hurting. It was TFF's first charted single. It went to number 3 on the British singles chart. When the song was finished for the album, Roland and Curt had no idea the song would be a huge hit. Now, there's some interesting facts inside the making of the music video for Mad World. It was Tears for Fears' first crack at making a music video, first of all. You'll see Curt Smith just chilling by a window, and outside Roland Orzabal is busting some moves on this lakeside jetty. Roland's moves were actually a choreographed dance that he created on his own. He was goofing around on location doing his Mad World dance, and the video's director saw him in action, and he just insisted that he put the dance in this video. The quick scene with a little party going on were actual friends and family of the band. Included Curt's mom and Lynn, Curt's wife at the time. After the smashing debut of The Hurting and the top 5 success of Mad World, Change, and the '83 version of Pale Shelter, Tears for Fears was on a course for superstardom. Of course, their follow-up album, Songs from the Big Chair, was a masterpiece that sold over 10 million copies. Their 3rd album, Seeds of Love, that sold over 2.5 million units, and it came out quite a bit after that. After Seeds of Love, though, Roland and Curt had a bit of a breakup of their own. Curt was going through a divorce and wanted to slow things down, while Roland wanted to keep the momentum going. In the early 2000s, the guys started to rekindle their friendship and, resurrect that Orzabal-Smith magic that made TFF such a great collaboration. And about that time, that TFF was reuniting, film director Richard Kelly was looking for a song that he could put into a pivotal scene for the movie Donnie Darko. Richard Kelly initially had his ears set on using MLK from U2's album The Unforgettable Fire for the movie. Budgets can be tight, and they couldn't afford the licensing fee for that particular song.
Sleep tonight.
So Kelly went to the much more cost-effective plan B and had Gary Jules do a rendition of Mad World. Kelly was pretty adamant about keeping it stripped down, though. He wanted no guitar and no drums to match the eerie atmosphere of this brilliant film. Jules sang the lead vocal, and Donnie Darko film composer Gary Andrews played the delicate piano parts. The team finished the recording for this version, the one that was used in the movie, in under 90 minutes. Gary Jules and Michael Andrews first dropped their version of Mad World on CD back in 2001 as part of Gary Jules' album Trading Snake Oil for Wolf Tickets. Then in 2002, it made its way onto the soundtrack for Donnie Darko.
Familiar faces, worn out places.
But actually, it wasn't until the DVD release of the movie when it gained a bit of a cult following, one that's definitely cult now, where these guys decided to give the song its own spotlight. So they officially released it as a single through Sanctuary Records on December 15, 2003. It was just in time for the race for the UK's Christmas #1. And guess what? It snagged the title the following week, beating out Christmas Time, Don't Let the Bells In by The Darkness. Gary Jules' version of Mad World was a worldwide sensation. Went to the top 5 in many countries and moved all the way to the top of the singles charts in the UK, Portugal, and Scotland. And it perched at #1 in the alternative rock chart here in America in 2003.
Find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad.
Now here's kind of a cool fact that a lot of people don't know. On the album version of Mad World, Off the Hurting, the last line that Curt Smith sings on this song, that's always confused listeners. Many have thought that the line was illogical world. I've even heard raunchy young world. I guess it sounds like it could be that. What do you think? The correct line is actually Halargian world. Halargian. I guess in the lead vocal session during the recording of Mad World, Curt added the phrase Halargian world as a joke. In the studio, Chris Hughes kept using a catchphrase saying, "Oh, that's so Halargian." And when Curt asked him, "What the heck does Halargian mean?" Chris told him it was just an imaginary planet that he made up. So he kept it in. Actually, in Gary Jules' version, he changed the phrase from Halargian world to enlarging your world.
Enlarging your world.
Since Mad World was such a transparent revelation by Roland Orzabal, that came from his deepest, darkest core, fans have naturally wanted to know what he thought of Gary Jules' interpretation of the song. Roland hailed Jules' achievement as the proudest moment of his musical career. He went on to say, and I quote, "Thank God for the 19-year-old version of me. Thank God he got depressed."
No one knew me, no one knew me.
The resurgent impact of Mad World is another demonstration of the timeless power a song can have on generation after generation. When he wrote Mad World, Roland Orzabal, he expressed his feeling of loneliness and isolation. He was surprised to find out that millions of people could relate to exactly what he was going through. And his song, interpreted by Curt Smith, another victim of a frustrating and alienating childhood, it would resonate so profoundly with a mass audience. Growing up, Gary Jules was a huge fan of Tears for Fears. Actually, his favorite TFF song was Mad World because he too watched the world around him with detachment and bewilderment. I mean, one never really knows what sticks with a person from their childhood and how it changes or shapes who they are today. But there's one thing that I do believe with all my heart. The music that you listen to when you're a child, when you're a teenager, it becomes a part of your being. It creates your world. It thankfully stays with you as an old friend for the rest of your life. And Tears for Fears has always been that for me, and so many others who survived our youth because of it. Leave us a comment about Tears for Fears, one of my favorite bands of all time. Incredible song, Mad World. Have you ever seen Donnie Darko? What are your memories of The Hurting, one of the greatest albums of the 80s? I really want to interview these guys, and I'm hoping it happens soon. Let's have a great discussion about geniuses, total geniuses of the 80s. I blown away by Tears for Fears. Let's have a great discussion about some of their greatest albums and songs below. If you like our content, we do invite you to subscribe below. We would love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, 3 chords.